Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just finished up talking about the conversation as to whether or not Victor Wembanyama should be the Defensive Player of the Year. But now we are going to be moving into a different team in the Western Conference, in the New Orleans Pelicans, who have been playing really good basketball as of late. And I don't think that they're getting necessarily the national attention for it. Now, we're talking about the Pelicans here. They've never been a team that have necessarily garnered national attention. But it's interesting to see because of the fact that, if you remember, I know that we're a few years removed from this, but Zion Williamson was one of the most highly touted prospects coming into the NBA. So much so that, honestly, if you look back to all the circumstances that went around there where COVID came in and shut down the regular season, we ended up having the bubble. But the NBA, a lot of people argued that the NBA was extending the potential playoff race and the play-in tournament to try and include Zion Williamson in the events. This was during his rookie season, and really since then, because of a lack of him being able to stay healthy, and honestly not just healthy, but some of the effort related things, he's very much fallen out of the good graces of NBA fans in general. And now we see that he does still have this ceiling that can really be effective. We're talking about someone here who almost made All-NBA teams in his second year when he really started coming along late in the year, but injuries got the best of him in 2020-21. He ends up falling out of that, misses the entire 2021-22 season, and most notably, when he was talked about earlier this season, was during the in-season tournament where you had Stephen A. Smith just laying into him, talking about the chefs and the cooks in New Orleans that loved him so much. Literally some of the most disrespectful conversations I have personally seen about an individual player. And now here we are where Zion quietly has really turned himself around. And again, we're talking about a multi-time All-Star here in a very short career. So it's not like he's been entirely short of, getting some of his respect. But now I feel like it's very interesting with the Pelicans, where they've won 7 of their last 8 games. They're on a little 3-game win streak themselves. And the Pelicans are right in the middle of this playoff race in the Western Conference. We talk so much about the Dallases, the Phoenixes, the Lakers, the Warriors, all these teams that have been struggling to stay consistent over the course of the regular season and whether or not they can turn things around and make the playoffs. Pelicans have never really had that issue. They've been right in the heart of the race the entire time. They are one of 4 teams in the Western Conference to have a 500 or better record against teams also 500 or better. They are 21-17. They are currently matched up with the LA Clippers for a potential 4-5 playoff matchup. They won, not that we've seen historically, especially as of late, the regular season does not translate to the postseason a lot of times in terms of whether or not those records actually matter. But the Pelicans won the season series 3-1 against the Clippers, and I don't think that the Clippers would want any sort of problems with the Pelicans in the playoffs, where the Pelicans have the size, they have the physicality, they have some good scorers on the team, a lot of solid role players, they're deep, and I do think that they could be a real problem. One of the most dominant Zion performances I saw this season came against the Clippers, where he was quiet for a lot of the game, and he just ended up in the fourth quarter using his size to just force his way through the Clippers defense that really wasn't giving him all too much respect. They were sagging off of him and basically giving him this launch pad where he was able to just ramp himself up, go through the chest of whatever defender was in front of him, whether it was at one point, I think it was Russell Westbrook, and then it was Zubats, it was Tice, I believe, was in the game as well. I'm trying to look back at it now here, but it was extremely impressive. He has been playmaking too as of late as well. These point Zion minutes have been really intriguing to me as well. This specific game, in case you want to look back and check it out, this was the game from February 7th where Zion took over in the fourth quarter and helped them win that game. But I just feel like for a player that got so much attention coming into the NBA, and one that was having people think the NBA was bending rules in order to have him play these nationally televised games, they are never talked about. And I understand that they're not as flashy as a team like the Mavericks, who I have also been pretty supportive of, I feel like, as much as anybody since the All-Star break where they added Gafford and Washington, and I've been very vocal about the fact that I really enjoy watching them play. But I think the Pelicans are probably scarier as a team in terms of winning a playoff series. Now, they don't have an individual player who can take over offensively to the level of Luka Doncic, or even maybe to some degree with Kyrie Irving as well. The biggest thing that I would be scared of with the Pelicans is the fact that their offense and their record in close games has not been good. They are 1-6 in games decided by one possession, and we've seen, for whatever reason, just an inability to get the offense going in the same level. Sure, they can run out in transition, and they're young, and they have guys that can run, but I do feel like Brandon Ingram is a good half-court scorer. CJ McCollum hasn't necessarily come up in the biggest of moments throughout his career, but I still think he's a very good player too. And I'm just not sure what it is that's holding back the Pelicans necessarily. Maybe it's somewhat the lack of shooting, where you have Zion on the court, and he can't necessarily extend a defense. Jonas Valanciunas as well. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I do feel like if you look at the roster of the Pelicans, they have just about everything you could possibly ask for, where they have a good offense, a good defense, they have the size, they have depth, everything you could really need, except for maybe that, S-tier scorer isn't necessarily there to help carry them in crunch time minutes, and maybe that's what it comes down to. But I do think that the Pelicans can be really scary. The Clippers should be scared of that potential matchup. The Pelicans have climbed their way into half a game behind the Clippers for the 4 seed, so they could end up taking over the Clippers. Paul George just had a quote too, a really weird one about the Clippers, where they don't have an identity right now. Clippers, for as much praise as I've given them this season as a contender, they have had some of the most random up and down moments in this season, and honestly, I'm not sure whether or not they're going to be able to fully come around here. But if the Pelicans can get themselves home court advantage for a first round series, that's a step in the right direction. There are a handful of teams that I think their physicality, there are other rosters in the NBA that they could not match up with. I would favor them over the Kings. I think I might favor them I would definitely favor them over the Mavericks in terms of the size that way. I think they'd be a difficult matchup for the Suns. All of this being said, I would not pick them to even make the NBA Finals. I would be shocked if they were able to knock off a Nuggets team in the playoffs. And, I think I'd be shocked for the most part if any of these teams in the Western Conference were able to take down the Nuggets. I just think that they are that good. But I do feel like there is a real lack of attention that the Pelicans get that they are probably deserving of, and they haven't really done anything, again, outside of these close games. That is definitely a red flag for me, and which is why I can't fully get myself to make the full-time claim they can make the finals. But they are absolutely building something there, and I am not totally sure what, off the top of my head at least, what their contract situations look like in the long-term future. They could probably benefit from a more traditional and frankly better point guard in the future. Again, I like CJ McCollum, but he's going to be making over $30 million per season over the course of the next 3 seasons. I feel like that money can be allocated somewhere else better, but you have Zion under contract, you have Brandon Ingram for another couple years, you have Herb Jones on a steal of a contract. Herb Jones, one of my favorite players in the league, but I do think that there's a lot of things that this team can really figure out. Jordan Hawkins on a rookie deal, Trey Murphy on a very cheap contract as well that I'm sure that they will try and work something out long-term with. But as opposed to me just continuing to list off their future salary cap situation, I just want to sort of put it out there and ask, like, what is it that the Pelicans need to do to fully earn the respect of the national media? Because to be fair, again, I'm not 100% saying that they should be viewed as a top-tier contender or favorites in their own conference or anything like that. But I do struggle to find a list of teams in the NBA that I truly think are better than the Pelicans. And again, maybe this is something that makes me end up looking stupid because of some of the late-game concerns with them, but I think that they are really up to something in terms of putting together a good roster, and I'm just curious sort of what the audience here thinks is the solution for them. And maybe, to be fair, I don't think that getting national media attention is a very good thing, frankly, in professional sports, where once you have all these people talking about you, it's that same thing that we see all the time of humanity building people and things up just to tear them down. Zion Williamson, especially with some of the, weight control stuff, some of the off-the-court issues that took place this past offseason, not that it's necessarily on him, but I feel like he is somebody who could probably benefit from flying under the radar a little bit. Brandon Ingram, I definitely think, deserves more credit. But in general, with this Pelicans team, I don't think that the consensus of people taking them seriously is to the level that it probably should be. But all time will tell in terms of that. We are officially, as of today, 1 month away from the beginning of the playoffs. They tip off on April 20th, so we will have to find out about all of that. But now we are going to be taking our final break, and when we come back on the other side, we will be talking some college basketball from the big news that broke out with Kansas yesterday, as well as the game that took place last night that had a lot of people up in arms. But stick with us, and we will be right back.